Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. It's John.
And it's Eric.
And there's no Paul, but it's What If Geeks. We cannot get together this month. Well, we've been having a problem. Everyone's traveling. It's cool. Whatever. So we conveniently arranged our show schedule so that we could all still somehow get you guys some information, some episodes out there. And since it's me and Eric today, we decided we're doing one of our favorite horror subjects. Since it is Halloween time, we started our Halloween episode last week, or our Halloween themes last week. So we are talking about zombies. Brains.
Brains. I feel like we should have creepy music. Can you edit that in afterwards? Like a gentle background creepy music thing?
Well, something Paul and I started to do with the hookup was to just play it on Amazon.
Uh-huh.
But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to build a playlist for next week when we're all three of us together. I ran out of time this week. I had a lot going on in the weekend. So I'm going to put together a playlist on my Amazon so it'll just play. What you looking for?
No.
Okay. So it should have something in the background for every episode, but we didn't do it last one, so I can see if I can edit something in later.
Yeah.
But I want to get this episode out this week too, so.
How hard is it to edit stuff in? Probably not difficult, yeah.
No, I can just do another line in there, so I just got to put it together.
I just need some graveyard wind blowing.
Yeah, something weird. Yeah.
Creaking every once in a while.
Yeah, well, let's see. After we get done recording for a little while, if I have to plug in my phone, we'll try to something because the hookup's right over there. So we can try to get it in the background while we're talking.
All right.
Yeah. So we are going over zombies, kind of like a zombie history for this. I think we're going to break it down into 2 or 3 parts here. So we'll have kind of a zombie history, where they came from, what they've been doing with themselves, and then how they kind of entered pop culture and the movies that we love. Because I have seen a lot of good and bad zombie movies.
Oh, yeah.
I love zombies. I keep begging God for a zombie apocalypse. He hasn't granted one yet, but I think it's close. I think it's coming. So yeah.
So this is the evolution of the zombie, right? More than a history, because
true.
We're going over sort of all the different ways that they've been introduced in movies and the types they've been introduced as, and also the origin stories, I guess, right? Which has all changed over time quite a bit. So, I think that'll probably be a whole episode on its own, but we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah.
So,
fun. I think a lot of you guys probably fast forward to most of this.
Yeah, or you can. I guess you can skip this one. I think in the next part we'll probably cover, what makes the zombie movie and why do people love them so much. That might be a little more interesting if you don't want to hear the evolution. But I think the evolution is actually interesting. So I of course didn't know all this. I had to research quite a bit of it. But
we're zombie geeks, so we kind of like this shit. So for those that do like zombies, welcome. For those that don't, we'll see you in the next episode. Maybe we'll have figured out the background noise by that point. We'll have Copper howl on the background a few times.
Yeah, that'll work. All right, so I guess starting on the timeline. So this all goes back originally to, voodoo culture in a way, but a lot of it's actually Haitian folklore, which has just sort of been married with the voodoo culture to come up with this. And that original zombie premise, the way that it came to the States, right, is that America occupied Haiti 1915 to 1934.
Yep.
Right? Because of all this political instability, and there was a bunch of leaders assassinated and political exiles. They had 6 presidents inside of 4 years or something. So the U.S. went and occupied it. And what happened shortly thereafter, I think, it was 1921 that Herbert West, Magic Island, I think was the main thing, right?
Yeah.
So William Seabrook went and visited Haiti, and he ended up writing a book called The Magic Island, where he sort of, it was an account of all his travels or whatever. And in that, he talked about the zombie phenomenon or whatever. And he said, and I'll read this, but he said, "The zombie, they say, is a soulless human corpse, still dead, but taken from the grave and endowed by sorcery with a mechanical semblance of life. People who have the power to do this go to a fresh grave, dig up the body before it's had time to rot, galvanize it into movement, and then make a servant or a slave of it. Occasionally for the commission of some crime, but more often as a drudge around the habitation or farm, setting it dull, heavy task and beating it like a dumb beast if it slackens. So that description of a zombie is way different than what we see in a zombie movie, right? That's the sort of like, it's almost like a drone slave or something, right? That you've like bewitched and it just does your bidding.
Yeah.
And it's not rotten and it doesn't eat brains and there's none of that. But that is what set off the first sort of, I guess, zombie genre thing in America.
Yeah, the classic zombie movie, 1932, White Zombie.
White Zombie, right? So that was the first one by Halperin Brothers. And it was about like a voodoo-controlled woman. She wasn't a zombie. She didn't eat brains.
The band.
That wasn't it.
The band is good too. But
So that's kind of where it started. But then from there, it took on a crazy evolution like over the decades, right? And that's where it gets really interesting. Because from White Zombie, there was just like all through the 40s and probably early part of the 50s, it was just sort of repeats of that White Zombie sort of theme with the, it wasn't brain eaters, it wasn't rotten corpses, it was just the people being controlled kind of stuff. And there was even a White Zombie sequel, I think, 1936. Yeah, it was 1936. Yeah. But so then in the 50s, zombies made their way into comic books, and specifically EC, or Entertainment Comics, who would later abandon everything and just do Mad Magazine. But
yeah.
But they
brought like the really cool ones, the Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah. So they had all those inserted in there: Tales of the Crypt, Vault of Horror, Weird Science. And the reason that those become important is not necessarily because they were put in a comic book, but because Romero would use that as part of his inspiration to do Night of the Living Dead in the late 60s, right? So those would become really influential. And of course, Tales from the Crypt became its own TV series on HBO. I think it must have been 89 or 90 when it started. It was all a bunch of mini stories that were taken from the old comics.
Yeah, which was really cool. And I've heard they're doing it again. I remember seeing an article that they're getting ready to do it again. I don't know how long it's going to take them. But it was kind of like right around the same time they did the... they announced like the Jordan Peele Twilight Zone. That was, I guess it was good, but it was kind of like you don't hear anything about it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that was in there, just like Creepshow, which I'm sure will turn up at some point during this conversation. They're doing that again on Shudder. That was what I was telling you earlier. I got to try to figure out how much it costs to subscribe to Shudder.com so I can start getting that fixed because they keep advertising on all my YouTube shit, and I want to see what it's all about because I've heard a lot of shit about Shudder.com, but I have not actually gone and like really checked it out. There's a lot of movies and shit on there you can watch.
Yeah?
Yeah. So we'll see.
It's all for horror?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's free?
No, that's what I'm saying. I got to go look to see what it is.
Oh, okay.
I keep getting advertisements, but I don't know. So if anyone knows and you can beat me to the punch, comment in there somewhere and let us know how much this shit is if you're subscribed at all.
Yeah.
Send me your subscription so I don't got to pay for it.
Send me your username and password. Just for a few days, I promise.
Yeah.
So in the, where were we? We were 50s comics. So also in the later, actually mid part of the 50s and all the way into the 60s, then filmmakers and book writers started introducing sort of these all new concepts. It wasn't about the the voodoo magic supernatural sort of zombie thing. It became something different, and they had probably, I don't even know, they came up with at least a handful of new ones. There were some important things that happened in there. So 1954 was when I Am Legend was written by Richard Matheson. Now that's technically a vampire book,
right?
Technically,
yeah.
But if you've seen the movie that comes later, I mean, it's hard to differentiate, really. And the reason, though, that it's even more important is that Romero said more so than the 50s comics, that book is what influenced his Night of the Living Dead series. And that was where he took most of his inspiration from. So even though it's a vampire movie, I mean, it has a lot of... The vampires in that movie have some zombie-ish... or in the book, sorry. Well, and the movie, I guess, have some zombie-ish themes to them.
They do, yeah. They don't look like your typical vampire either.
No.
But it's also the same time where you start to get like a little more of the current trope, like you were saying, where like it's not just voodoo, it's nerve gas or aliens or viruses or something.
Yeah.
Something else is causing these zombie
Yeah, in the 50s in
Breakouts.
particular, I think there was the nuclear zombie, which was like, brought on by the Red Scare or whatever, the Russians testing bombs, and that was like 1949.
Right.
And a little bit maybe of the Nazis too with the nerve gas stuff. And there was a movie, actually it wasn't in this time frame though, it was made much later, that Snow movie about the Nazi zombies.
Dead Snow.
Dead Snow,
Yeah, that's really good. That should be on my list, but it's not. We'll throw that in for my honorable mention too.
But I think there were some previous ones in the 50s, 60s time frame that had like some Nazi-ish themes to them too.
Yeah.
So people are playing off. I don't want to get too far into that because that's something we're going to talk about in the next episode about playing off these tropes and why they came about. But so I guess, did you have anything else in the 50s, 60s time frame until we get to...
No, I rolled right into Night of the Living Dead.
Okay, yeah. So Romero basically did the first really big feature, gory zombie film, and it was black and white. It was Night of the Living Dead, 1968.
Coming to get you, Barbara.
Right? That was also the first movie where zombies had been depicted as like flesh eaters, like after the human flesh or whatever.
Now, something key that happens here too is it wasn't just Romero.
Well,
it was Romero and John Russo, right? They co-wrote this thing and they put it out there, and then they had a slight falling out. So Romero continued on with the Of the Dead series, kind of, and Russo had retained the rights to Of the Living Dead. And that brand. So then he wrote a script for Return of the Living Dead, which is technically supposed to be the true sequel to Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, was that...
Because it was Russo.
That was like... When was Return of the Living Dead, though? That was later. That was quite a bit later.
It was quite a bit later, yeah. But that was now... The Return of the Living Dead, we can find it here in a second.
I think it was... It was like 85.
It was in the 80s.
Yeah.
But that was...
I think it was 85.
That's where you get what most people think of when... like the common folk, not you guys. When they think of zombies, they think... brains, that's the Return of the Living Dead zombies.
Yeah,
the brain. They only eat brains.
Yeah, it was 1985. I do have it on here. It's just much later.
Yeah,
but yeah, that was the first brain-eating zombie, and I have a scene out of that I remember.
Yeah, where the Night of the Living Dead, Day of the Dead, Dawn of the... all the Romero zombies are simply flesh eaters. They have a hunger for flesh. They eat flesh. Russo's Return of the Living Dead brand. Honestly, there was like maybe the first two were good. Third one was okay. After that, they kind of fell off. There's a couple more there, and that's like not worth it watching, but I watched them anyway because I punished myself. But that was the brains, and they could talk.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Remember they could talk because
that's another thing that changed because
that was one of the funniest things. They attacked the paramedics outside the hospital, like the first or second one, and then you hear the radio in the ambulance going off, and the one zombie picks it up and says, "Send more paramedics." and it evolves later on. I mean, it's not to say Romero's zombies didn't eventually evolve during his series, because they did, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah, how many? Romero must have done six movies. Were there 6 movies for
Night, Dawn, Day, Land, Diary, and then Survival. Survival was
one of those was
Ireland.
by his son, though, wasn't it?
I think it might have been Survival.
Okay.
But yeah,
There was a big gap in those, too, because it was like 68, 78, 85, then like 2005 or something.
Yeah, or something. Yeah, that was because they started doing the remakes.
Mm. Oh, yeah, because they did the Dawn of the Dead remake 2004.
Yeah, and I guess we might be getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, we are getting ahead of ourselves. Yeah, anyway, so let's.
I just wanted to make the distinction between Romero and Russo and those two brands.
So late 60s, those two, I think Romero in particular, but we'll say those
he is
two.
who you think of when you think of Night of the Living Dead or even zombies.
And his movies weren't comedic either, unlike what Russo would do later with the Brain Eaters, which was
they were funny.
Romero's were much more much more serious, and they would address like points in popular culture or whatever. He integrated them into the film.
First one was more about racism, kind of.
Yeah, well, because the main character was black, and Ben, right? That was his name, Ben.
Ben,
and then he was smart, he was strong, but all the way through the film, he's having like butt ups with white people that are like the sheriff or whatever, and just people that are like
the people in the house.
Yeah, just having those butt ups with him, and that was about, it wasn't just zombies he was dealing with, but also this was about civil rights too, and just sort of reflecting things about that. And he did that all the way through his films. And this is another topic I've got down the road.
We'll touch on that one. All right, so moving on from Night of the Living Dead, we'll put a pin in that. We'll get back to that.
Yeah, so then all through the 70s, probably all the way through to the early 90s, I think, there was like a whole bunch of series that were not that good. At least I think.
You're being very nice.
So, I mean, there was the Dawn of the Dead sequel by Romero in 78, which was not bad. Mm-hmm. There was Day of the Dead, which was the third one. That was 85. Hey, I got the date right. But then there was like the Blind Dead series, which was not very good. Gates of Hell, which was essentially an Italian rip-off of it.
Yeah, pretty much.
The Evil Dead series, although that wasn't quite zombies.
The Deadites.
That was
zombies.
More,
They're called Deadites. They're more demons. But, it kind of... People shrugged it into that.
There really genre. Just wasn't. There wasn't any like new material. People were just sort of remaking it with not so great actors but there was, I think, at least one exception in that time frame, because Stephen King wrote Pet Sematary and that published in 83.
Yeah,
and then he actually sold the film rights for that to Romero the following year. But Romero had to pull out of that because he had other commitments, and Mary Lambert took over. That movie didn't end up getting released until 1989. But the reason I say it's different is because that one was, people were burying their animals in that cemetery. It definitely had a supernatural flair to it, but they were burying their animals in there to bring their animals back to life. And then, of course, somebody wants to
buries a kid. Yeah,
yeah, bring a human back to life, and it's just not your typical zombie anything. I mean, it's not a horde. There's just one of them. I guess it becomes two at the. But there's just one of them, and there's different.
It's not a whole outbreak.
Yeah, and it's like it's more of they're a zombie, but it's more playing back on the old stuff of like somebody being mind controlled, although they're not mind controlled or anything, but they're just sort of like droning around and they're not quite right.
Yeah.
It was a different play on it. It didn't really follow that old or that current trope, I guess, for the time. Mm-hmm. I thought it was good. I was one of the few I liked from that time frame a lot.
Yeah, and then Zelda will stick with you for the rest of your life. Just the sister Zelda. Just go back and watch that again.
And then that was actually recently remade too, wasn't it?
Yeah, and again, I watched it with my daughter, and they did a really good job with that one, which is kind of giving me hope for between It Chapter 2 and Pet Sematary. Pet Sematary was definitely it got decent reviews, but it wasn't quite up there with the movie It, but it was good, and it was good enough for me to have hope for other directors taking over new Stephen King projects. So we can kind of see what happens there. But
all right,
yeah.
So let's see, 89 was Pet Sematary. So in the 90s, in Japan, there was a bunch of video games that were made. But two of them were super successful and made their way across to the U.S. and became like freaking boomers.
One of my favorite games in the world, the original Resident Evil.
Resident Evil, yeah. And that, of course, became a series, but that was the original game was 96.
The first two games were really, really cool. After that, I kind of fell off of them a little bit because I just kind of I put a pause on playing video games for a little while. But the first two were really cool. You had the first one that was mostly in that mansion.
Yep.
And the B voice acting that was in this game was amazing, But then the second one was a little bit better, and it was the whole Raccoon City thing, where you had a little bit more area to explore. But overall, those two were great for me.
Yeah.
So I got excited when they were going to make the movies for it.
Well, so we'll talk about the movies, but there was another game too at the same time, House of the Dead, which probably most people played in the arcade.
Yep.
But that was also available, I think, for the Sega Dreamcast. I remember my cousin Adam having that game.
Yeah, they would also do a spin-off for a keyboard called Typing of the Dead.
Really?
Yup. I'm not kidding.
So, I mean, these games sort of change the dynamic, right? Because they sort of put you in the story with the zombies, and it was more about, getting you to react and survive in this situation. And so it's really a completely different thing, but it really grabbed a lot of people's attention, I think, and really took off. Now, Resident Evil was interesting because it wasn't exactly zombie. I mean, it is. I mean, there's a virus, but the first one, it feels very supernatural, demonic. It has these weird creatures.
Yeah, like the first one, the first one is almost strictly zombies, and then you have a handful of things that happen in there that are not. So you definitely know that there's been experimentation done. Then they kind of go off and do whatever, and that's kind of what they push the movies toward more than the zombie. I don't know, and I guess like for that, I've always kind of like, while I like the Resident Evil movies, I do, but not for as far as like, you know, they lost some of the feel of the game. Like they didn't quite do the game justice. You know,
yeah.
I would have liked to have seen it more like the close quarters, stuck in the mansion, trying to figure out how the hell to get out of there. Zombies walking around, because there were enough zombies in that game to make you be like, well, I'm gonna get bit and die. You know? So I don't know. I don't have too many gripes on that one.
So by the end of the 90s, they had decided to make both of those games into movies, which I think in both cases they didn't actually come until 2002, 2003, something like that. It was early 2000s before they actually hit theaters, but they started filming them. And while this is jumping ahead in the timeline, I just read this interesting piece of trivia that I thought I'd share. Resident Evil is the only video game to movie adaptation ever that has increased revenues every single successive movie release. So 6 movies, and every time they made more money than the last one.
Oh yeah, like I said, like it's
impressive
series,
if you do that with 2 or 3 movies in a video game, but 6 is incredible. It really is.
To have
and
6
I don't even
movies
think they're that good.
Video game franchise. Yeah, I enjoyed them. They're not good as far as like zombie horror or whatever.
Well, they start to get really
they keep
crazy.
Pushing it like it's a zombie horror thing, but it's not, because it goes crazy.
Yeah.
I think the less said about House of the Dead, the better.
Yeah.
This is a U-Bowl movie, and that's pretty much all you got to say about it. It's actually on my list that you'll hear of later on. But
So okay, so getting out of the 90s, 2002, British film by Danny Boyle, 28 Days Later. Honestly, I'm not going to ruin anything, but that was one of my favorite zombie movies, because they totally changed everything by having those like super fast runner rage zombies. It was like a whole new thing for me. And maybe it appeared in a movie before and I just don't know about it, but that was the first one I remember. And
the Return of the Living Dead zombies ran a little bit.
Well, yeah.
No, they did. I mean, they did, but it wasn't like that.
But yeah, these guys were like raged out, crazy, like snarling, like sprinting after people.
Why?
Like what?
Because they weren't zombies.
Well, but they are though. I mean, it's still a zombie. It's still a zombie theme.
They weren't zombies. They were infected with a rage virus.
Yes, they were infected. I got it. But they're still borrowing all the zombie
I'm just fucking
tropes
with you.
on
I'm
how
just
they
quoting
kill people. And
I'm quoting the director. I totally lumped this in with like one of my favorite zombie movies. I don't give a shit what he says. It's a fucking zombie movie.
I don't either, to be honest. And then they introduced another concept, which I don't think you had seen before, which was that you could get infected yourself just by getting the blood like
in you
on your eye, whatever, in your nose. It didn't really matter. So they haven't done that in a lot of zombie movies, and they still don't, because it would be really complicated when you're up close
to survive
killing in these zombies. Like everybody would be dead in the first 20 seconds, and it's kind of how 28 Days Later is, right? Anybody that gets near a zombie, kill it or not, they're pretty much dying.
Yeah,
so
which is cool.
I like the way they did that movie. It was just really aggressive, and you never quite knew what was going to happen. And then there's a couple scenes where somebody gets splattered with blood and you're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
And because they change in like 15 seconds. I mean, it's like,
it's fast.
Boom. And if you're dealing with another fucking zombie thing, not a zombie, an infected.
That's okay. No. I was just playing devil's advocate for Danny Boyle over there.
So then
he insists. Oh my God, he's gonna take that shit to his grave.
Whatever. That is a zombie. I know. In fact, I did see that without knowing anything about him as a zombie movie to me.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I can't. It's a cool zombie movie.
It's awesome.
So
everyone said, you totally changed the zombie genre. He's like, oh, it's not a zombie movie. Yeah. Well, fuck you. Yes, it is.
So 2 years later, 2004, they do Dawn of the Dead, which is a reboot of the second or the third
Second
Romero film. second. But this is Zack Snyder this time, I think that was his movie debut, actually, as director. So. But then he would go on to do Man of Steel, Watchmen, 300, a bunch of other cool stuff. And then James Gunn, interestingly, it was like, I don't know.
I didn't know this one.
There's all I say. So James Gunn did the screenplay for Dawn of the Dead, the reboot. Yeah. And so he would, of course, go on to do all the Guardians of the Galaxy movies and the Avengers, Endgame, and what the hell's the other one? Infinity War.
Yep.
So aside from some little differences in plots and characters, there were definitely more characters in the remake, which people bitched about because it got them less screen time and less character development, but I don't know if that was really the point anyway. But they made the zombies, again, like more fast and agile, like borrowing from 28 Days Later. They were quicker than the original.
Like when they were just kind of...
they weren't rage zombies, but...
Yeah, and like I think it showed one of the first times where it was kind of like more along what I was picturing zombies to be, like if you're freshly dead or like you just got bit and you turned, but you were just alive, you'd be much faster. But then like some of the other ones are kind of like shambling around still slow. Yeah. So I think like the longer you are a zombie or the older your corpse gets, the slower it gets. Kind of.
Yeah, it should.
Which makes sense and it's cool. But yeah, that was one of the. I remember that trailer where they were like running away from the zombies in the parking lot of the mall. And they run up the stairs, and that one like jumps up onto the steps, grabs onto the railing, and then the guy shoots it. But like it jumps. It's the first zombie I've ever seen jump. I was like, oh, well, you're fucked. That was a really good. That was a really good remake. That's a really good one. I like that one.
Yeah, I mean, some people bitched about it and said it wasn't good as the original, but
I think it was better than the original one. I'm sorry.
I think I'm tainted because. Always when I see a remake, well, not always, but vast majority of the time when I see a remake of something done from 60s or 70s or whatever, I immediately go to, well, fuck, the special effects are so much better. I mean, fuck it, yeah, it's better.
Well, sure.
It doesn't even have to be a better storyline necessarily, but you lose something when you rewatch. I mean, if you saw them once way back then, before any of the sort of new technology existed, you can accept it, right? You're like, okay, yeah, it was awesome for its time. But when you watch something years and years later, especially if you haven't even seen the original and you go back and look at it later, fuck no. You can't do it. You can't do it. It's just like, geez, what the fuck am I watching? What is this?
Yeah, no, that's how I feel.
So anyway, I'm with you on this one. I think the reboot was probably better than the original, but...
And hey, the original didn't have a zombie baby.
I didn't see the original in 1978. I would have seen it in the 90s probably. So, for me, it was like...
me too. Yeah. I saw it like in the 80s, something like that. Yeah,
maybe I saw it in the 80s. I don't know, but anyway, much later, and it's just kind of like, we've gone past that. Yeah. So then, also 2004, I think it was right after Dawn of the Dead reboot. Actually, was the Shaun of the Dead movie, which was like the first, like I don't want to call it serious, the first real like zombie comedy, zomcom. Is that?
Yeah.
Is that what?
Yeah, that's what
I had never heard this term before. I learned 3 new terms while I was reading through stuff today. Rom-zom, right, which is some new thing. We'll get there in a minute. The zomcom, and then the zom-rom-com. Like, oh my god, who made all this shit up? So, Shaun of the Dead was hilarious. I saw that one right when it came out. Everything about that movie is funny. They do perfect plays on so many tropes in zombie movies. Everything about it is just funny. Even the way it starts, where he is like essentially a zombie himself before the outbreak happens, because he's just like
walking over to the deli,
over
to the store. Yeah, he's walking over to the store, go to get something to drink. He's walking back home, and the whole time, like as he's walking, you see zombies staggering around in the background, but they're like it's all out of focus because he's not paying attention. So the whole camera is out of focus on them. You don't see what they're doing. Mm-hmm. But it was priceless.
And there's so many good scenes in that movie. I mean, some of them are just ridiculous. And I'm going to talk about scenes later, but
yeah,
I mean that movie got great reviews, including by Stephen King and Roger Ebert, which I'm sure helped. It got a bunch of awards. Even now, today, it still has super high ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, on IMDb, on Metacritic. They're all up there. So, I mean, I definitely made a big difference in the Zomcom, and I think it's what allowed some of the movies that would come.
I was going to say it paved the way for the next one
to really be successful, which jump ahead 5 years, and Zombieland comes out, which has got to be one of the funniest and maybe my favorite zombie movie to date.
It's up there. It's definitely up there. I cannot wait for 2 more weeks.
Yeah, it's October 11th.
Yeah, so, okay, about 2 more weeks, maybe 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2 or 3 more weeks, and we get Zombieland double tap.
Yeah.
And they got the entire cast coming back, including cameos from Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd. I don't know how the hell they're going to do that. Spoiler alert for the other movie. But the only thing I can picture is that Dan Aykroyd maybe finds Bill Murray and is walking him around a la Michonne from Walking Dead.
Oh.
Something like that.
Okay.
That
could be funny. So that was a Ruben Fleischer film, Woody Harrelson, Jesse Eisenberg, Emma Stone, and I forget that other girl's name, Adra something.
Abigail Breslin.
Oh, you got there. Oh, Abigail Breslin. That's it.
Something like that, yeah.
All right. So all of them are coming back.
Yep.
Okay. All right. That'll be good.
Have you seen the trailer?
Yeah, you showed me the trailer.
I was gonna say, yeah, they're all in it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because at the end of the trailer, there's that joke play where you have other characters that look like
just like them in the first one. Yeah, it's just funny because they go to the White House and he kicks his feet up in the Oval Office, and Eisenberg's like, just you in that chair. And Woody Harrelson's like, "You're welcome, America."
God, everything about that movie is funny, man. Oh,
I can't wait. This is gonna be amazing.
It's a great movie.
Please don't fuck it up. Please don't fuck it up. Please don't fuck it up. Okay, there you go.
I don't think they will.
No. It took them long enough.
So then, I guess, also in the 2000s, but jumping even more forward, you have this emergence of these weird zombies as humans kind of thing, where like the zombies are more human-like.
That's where you get your Rom-Zom.
This is where you get the Rom-Zom from. Yeah. So they had the Pushing Daisies series, which is by Brian Fuller. Interestingly, he did 81 episodes of Voyager. I did not know that until today either.
Holy shit.
81 episodes. That's a lot of them. Anyway.
I didn't know there were 81 episodes of Voyager.
Yeah, there's a lot more than that, I think. I mean, there must have been 7 seasons of that show or something.
Not a big Star Trek guy.
Camille with James Franco was 2008. That was a weird movie, but the same concept. And then Warm Bodies, which I think was really popular. So that
was amazing.
Nicholas
I love
Hoult.
that movie. Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't actually seen that.
You gotta put that on your list.
Okay.
When's Becca coming back home?
I don't know.
Just because you got time while the kids are in school to see. There you go. Kids are in school. Get your ass in gear. Watch Warm Bodies.
All right, Warm Bodies. So that has Nicholas Hoult, who plays Beast in all the X-Men films.
Yeah. So this is
he's the zombie in this movie. Yeah.
Because that's all you can say.
And so they have a weird.
So she calls him R. He falls in love with this girl, who just happens to be the daughter of the leader of the human resistance, whatever the hell, the zombie killers. So he falls in love with her, and there's this whole story. It's pretty funny. So
from what I understand, at the beginning of the movie, you're seeing things from his perspective, and he only eats like brains because he gets to live like the memories or something of the people whose brains he eats or some
memories,
shit. And that's what keeps him going, because otherwise he's just sort of like the most depressed person imaginable that can't commit suicide. And he has like friends or whatever, right? But all he can do is communicate with them in like grunts and moans, and he can't really talk. Isn't that how it works?
Pretty much, yeah. It's funny.
It's like the most terrible existence ever.
Yeah, because they're all zombies. Yeah, so they just kind of wander around doing dumb shit.
And then one that Becca and I have actually watched all the seasons so far. I think there's 3. Santa Clarita Diet. Have you watched this? Drew Barrymore.
No, but I would want to check it out. 1, because it's zombies, and 2, because it's Drew Barrymore.
Yeah,
and
she basically...
Every once in a while, she gets... I'm like, I need to watch her.
This movie has some interesting stuff, and I won't ruin it for you. But, I mean, she becomes a zombie, and then she has to eat humans, or, she's going to die or whatever. Well, yeah, whatever it is, yeah. Sure. Rot, that's a better way to put it. But there's a lot of weird stuff in this movie. The stuff in a regular zombie movie where you can decapitate, or this show, sorry, where you can decapitate a zombie and it's done. Yeah, it doesn't play here. The head stays alive and it keeps talking, and they play with that in the show with other.
Okay.
It's weird, but it's interesting. It's funny sometimes. Actually, a lot of the time. but it is more of a romantic comedy sort of thing. All
right, we got to check it out. Flair. We thought about checking it out, but we never did. So if you guys are recommending it, I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's not bad. And then 2010, the first series, I guess, really the first major series that was super successful, The Walking Dead, which is now on. They're filming the 10th season. Yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah, not only are they filming the 10th season. All right, so let me give you a little bit of background from me with The Walking Dead. I started reading the comic, right? Because again, we'll go back, like, we're big comic nerds, right? For a while there in the even through parenthood in the 2000s, I had read comics for a while, but I stopped buying them for a little bit, just, put money elsewhere. So I went to Iraq and came back home in 2009. I was looking for something to read just to kind of, while I was on leave for like the holidays and stuff, right? I had like an extended, like a month off. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to find something to read. Heather and I went out with the kids to Barnes & Noble. She's picking out books. I'm like looking at the graphic novels in there, I'm going to pick up a couple. And while I was in there, I had always seen The Walking Dead in comic book stores, but I just didn't want to buy another one, so I kept skipping it. Well, I knew it was out there, so when I saw the graphic novels, they had these compilations of 6 issues into one, and they had like 7 or 8 of them there. So I was like, well, I bought the first 3 because they were on sale. I was like, let me check them out. I was friggin' hooked, dude. So then you fast forward to right before the show comes out, right, like about 2 months before the show comes out, 2010. I've already bought everything that's in Barnes & Noble, and I'm trying to Google when the next compilation is going to come out, right? So I type in Walking Dead, whatever, and as I'm looking for the comic, I see a little shot, an image on the computer, what looks like a real-life Rick Grimes on a horse going down a highway, right? It's a still shot. I'm like, what the hell is that? So I click it, and this is how I find out that they're actually making a damn TV show out of like, my new favorite comic, right? I about lost my shit. I was like, this is going to be amazing. So Halloween night 2010, Walking Dead premieres. And I think most of America who are even remotely into zombies collectively lost their shit that night. Mm-hmm. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Now, throughout the rest of the series, it'll have its ups and downs, and we can talk about that later. But overall, this show has like redefined zombies in pop culture. Like it brought them right to the forefront. It made them important again. And it did a great job. Like, Robert Kirkman killed it with these guys.
It did, and they sort of married a zombie flick with, like, a soap opera. I was just like, it's kind of all over the place, and we'll get to this in the next segment, but they also really, really played on the post-apocalyptic archetype where the other humans are as much of a threat to you as the zombies are.
Yeah,
more so, yeah. Which was what makes it so fucking interesting.
Yep.
Is that there's all these different factions at play. It's not just a little tiny group versus the zombies.
Yeah, and they came out with a spin-off in 2015-ish, right?
Yep, 2015.
Fear the Walking
Dead, which is now on its 5th season.
Yep, and it's good. I'm enjoying that. And that one, again, also had its kind of ups and downs. Because what it did was it initially started, it was supposed to be like way back in the very beginning of the zombie apocalypse.
It's the prequel to
They did that for like 4 episodes.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, it was like zombies are everywhere, whatever. It was fast. It happened fast. And then sometime within the seasons, they fast forwarded so that they've caught up with The Walking Dead, because there's been a couple of crossover characters that have gone from Walking Dead over to Fear, which has actually breathed new life into them. Again, no pun intended, but for their Dead show. But yeah, like you got Morgan and Dwight show up in Fear the Walking Dead, and they're doing a really good job there. It's a good show. There are moments within the last couple seasons that Fear is actually better than the original.
Well, I can buy that. I'm sure I told you this, but I got tired of The Walking Dead because the soap opera sort of started to play out the same a little bit.
Yeah. Like when they introduced Negan, it gave it a good shot in the arm with Jeffrey D. Morgan playing Negan.
That might have been the last season I watched. What season was that?
It was a couple seasons ago. So
6?
7. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, because they ran around with him for a season or so, and then I don't know. And now they're on The Whisperers.
I don't know anything
about
really that.
Yeah, that's a really good season. I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to 10.
I guess I could binge watch the shit out of it and catch up, but I don't want to get disappointed again because it really sort of got old for me.
Well, then they're also doing, I don't know, you watch it. Watch it, tell me what you think, because then it'll at least give us more shit to talk about. Binge watch up until 10, because 10's going to drop here in another, next month.
Okay.
It's going to start, so then we can watch it, and we can do a Walking Dead review. Maybe we'll get together, we'll really piss my wife off and get together like on a Monday or Tuesday night, or we'll get together Monday night, and record just us doing the Walking Dead review, so Paul doesn't have to be bothered with it. And then Tuesday we can get together and that'll really make her mad. Becca will be like, "What the hell are you guys doing?"
Yeah, what's that show they do right after The Walking Dead?
Talking Dead.
Yeah.
So it'd be like our version of the Talking Dead. Yeah.
The day after.
Geeking Dead. That pissed everybody off. But then, now they're also doing there's another spinoff coming. I don't think it has a title yet. Doesn't have a title yet.
I was looking for one everywhere.
But essentially, this is about like teenagers or kids that have. This is all they know is the zombie apocalypse world, right? They don't know anything about what happened before, and now what I would assume is like because what it looks like the little bits that I've seen them describing it from like even the actors, they're venturing out into the world. So they're probably in one of these communities like Alexandria or whatever, and all they know is living inside this community. They know there's zombies out there or whatever, but they're living inside this community, so they're a little sheltered. They don't know anything about the previous world, so they're just going to kind of go out on their own and do their own thing. Maybe they run away or some shit. So there's a handful of kids that take off into the zombie-infected world. But there's also supposed to be 3 movies coming out as well.
I know about one of them.
Yeah. It's going to be about Rick Grimes.
Yeah.
So, they're all 3 supposed to be about Rick Grimes.
Oh, is this like a trilogy of Rick Grimes movies?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize there were going to be 3 of them.
Yeah. And I don't want to go too far into spoiler territory with all that shit of why they're doing movies and whatever. So I'll let you catch up, and then we'll talk about it.
All right, and
so moving on to the last section of this. Show.
Yeah. So I think this is the last part on the evolution, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, 2013 World War Z, and so why bring this up? Because I know half people that saw it hated it, but maybe that's not true. Just people I know. But it was based on a 2006 book by Max Brooks. Sorry. It, of course, starred Brad Pitt, and he was also the lead producer or the co-producer. I'm not sure how it panned out. But,
I think so.
So it ended up taking the highest grossing zombie movie of all time. It nearly tripled the record, which had previously been set by Zombieland. I think Zombieland had an opening weekend of 22 million, and this was at 68.
Wait until 3 more weeks.
Yeah. And then of all-time gross, I think Zombieland, last I looked, was at something like 66 million, while this was at 202 million. I mean, it was just like
it did really good, and it was it was one of those things that pushed the boundaries of what you expected a zombie movie to do.
Yeah,
like
so
they were like ants.
Yeah,
like a hive mindset kind of thing, and
so
it was really cool.
And there was a lot of things they did in this movie that are sort of unique because most zombie movies, all the ones we've talked about, pretty much, even The Walking Dead, which has gone on forever, it's isolated to a community or maybe a state or maybe even a country. Sort of The Walking Dead, you could say, is country. I mean, even though it's only taken place in a handful of different spots, you know that the whole country is jacked, right? Basically.
Right. Yeah.
This went way past that and made it global. And, there's parts where they go to Israel and they just play on so many.
They follow along with Max Brooks' book.
Mm-hmm.
That was.
Yeah. And there's
which was like excerpts of stories and shit, right? Like interviews, which was cool.
So they just have so many different plays. They also make it about humans versus humans. It's not purely about the zombies, but these zombies are fucking crazy. And, even like the wall around Jerusalem, like can't stop them. And I don't want to ruin it. I mean, because that's a great scene that
it's in the trailer. It's in the trailer.
Oh, it's in the trailer. Yeah. So there's just so much cool shit. And it was just more global of a zombie movie, right? It's the whole fucking world.
Yeah.
It's an outbreak that reaches everywhere.
Yeah.
So,
and I think in the next one we can get into some more of the Max Brooks shit, what the movie did, what the book did, and that kind of shit.
All right, so how we do on that? Is that a good part 1? Do we hit?
It's 43 minutes.
43. Look at that, that's perfect.
Look at that. Oh, Becca's gonna be happy.
All right,
she's gonna be mad at me though if she listens to last week because I was talking shit about the girls on the cruise, talking about our time. I was like straight talking shit, and I'm like. I went and I looked it up. It doesn't have to be 45 minutes.
It doesn't.
No, well, it was a whole thing that Paul and I were doing. We'll talk about it offline. But yeah, when she goes, John was talking shit about us. When you're not allowed to hang out with me for a week, then you know why.
All right, so we're gonna wrap that up. That's the evolution of zombie movie. In the next segment, we'll talk about what sort of archetypes came from all that and what makes zombie movies successful. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, get ready, guys. We're coming for more zombies, part 2. To be continued.
Part 2 of the Zombie-Palooza.
All right. Good night, Tony.
Good night, Ma.